Hello, everybody. This is Anshumanik. I hope that all of you can hear me well. I think it's about time, so we can get started. So this talk is going to be about some interesting projects and prototypes and inspired concepts. What that means is that we have actually worked on some very interesting projects coming from our clients, as well as some concepts for them. And I would like to share some of those. Of course, one of the constraints that we face is that we can't talk about the projects directly, using the same topic because of the non-disclosure agreements that we have generally with pretty much all of our customers and clients in technical consulting. But then what I have tried to do is to show you the projects which are going to be as close conceptually to those. And the second disclaimer, of course, also is that therefore, what I'll show you some of the prototypes. Those are actually prototypes, not actual production environment systems as such, but that should actually present the concepts that I wanted to share with all of you. Of course, let me first begin with what does the technical consulting team do? I think many of you may be aware of what our team does, but some of you may not be. So in the interest of those participants, I'm going to present it very, very quickly. First of all, some of you may have been more familiar with the name technical services. Now that has been changed to technical consulting. So I hope that that doesn't create any confusion. It's the same team, but we are now technical consulting group. So we have always tried to make our offerings, our services as flexible as possible for our clients. However, we have tried to categorize in what ways we can engage with them. So the first primary way could have been project support, where we take the requirements, data, specifications from you. We go ahead and design, develop, and deploy it for you. So that's like turnkey project, or we engage in, under what's called as development support. In this offering, we work as collaboratively with you as an extension of your team, like any other team member. Whatever work that you would like us to be able to do for you, we can do that. Business support, on the other hand, is where our consultants work full-time with you on any broad variety of projects that you may be working on. They're exclusively there for you. We also provide advanced training, which are customized to the specific projects that you may be working on, and application support for any application that you have developed or we have developed for you. So this is just to give you an idea what are the engagements that consulting team has. That's not really the topic of the discussion today. But I did want to impress on this fact that because Wolfram language, it has such a broad base, so we tend to get projects from pretty much all different verticals. Of course, as you can see in this chart, companies from engineering and technology background vertical tend to be the larger, fraction of the projects. But then we get good number of projects from finance and banking, government, and very representational fractions from education, media, energy, and so on. And this is something that keeps our team very excited. Now, one of the reasons why I mentioned this is that obviously we'll not be able to talk about, all different things that can be done. So I have picked up a few projects and concepts for discussion today. So first is natural language query for your data. Second, the concept of a decision support system. I'll go into more details when we get there. And then we developed our own custom online learning system. We'll then talk about fault detection using machine learning, and finally about targeted marketing using machine learning. So let me get started with the natural language query. So most of you must be familiar with Wolfram Alpha, which answers questions in plain English. However, Wolfram Alpha has its own data, and you're querying into that data set only. But what if you have your own data? Then we can actually apply the same concepts, the same functionality in Wolfram language to your data. And I'm going to show just a few examples So in this case, I'm going to be talking about a factory outlet data. I have gathered just, I think a few months worth of data in this case for demonstration. So let me just ask using plain English. So let's say sales after March 21st, and I'm going to say search. Now what it is doing is it's actually looking into the database, it fetched the data, filtered it, then developed these statistics and visualizations and returned it back to us. So the entire process, got shortened to like 2 or 3 seconds that it took. But then we can see some very interesting results that come out of it just with a simple search that we did. For example, there were 93 sales, and the mean of the sale happens to be around $300. Standard deviation itself is more than $200, so I think the spread seems to be somewhat appreciable. The minimum is at 19, whereas the maximum is at 900. So I think it's like a very thin tail on the right side, but a fat tail on the left side. So I can derive that kind of intelligence right away. We can look at how the sales have actually grown over a period of time. In this case, I chose to have only about 10 days worth of data for this query. Now, some more interesting things come here. This shows that maximum number of sales have happened for the lower price range products and very few for the higher ones, which probably is expected. Now, because in this particular query, I asked about sales, which relates to revenue. So it's giving me option only for revenue. But if there were queries where multiple factors could have been involved, then I would actually automatically get a drop down to be able to see the histograms for all of them. Now here is something which is even more interesting, because now it is showing us geospatially what that sale has been. And we can see that, well, pretty much all the suburbs around Chicago in this case, they have contributed well enough to sales. Certain ones, like one in Northbrook, seems to have contributed more than others. So this gives you a very good feel for how the sales has been happening, right? It could be other types of visualizations. It could be for, let's say, larger regions. It need not be just around the city. It could be entire US, or it could be the entire North America or entire planet for that matter. But then it gives you a very good feel for it. And remember that all of this is coming just with 4 or 5 word search that we did. Here we can derive actually even more insight. This is the distribution of the sales. We can see that this is fat right around the bottom dollar values, but at the top dollar values it tapers off. But here is something which really excites me as a user. It actually went ahead and ran an ANOVA analysis for me. And it tells me that in this case, it is plotting branches ABC for the corresponding data. And it tells me that the difference between these 3 branches are not that significant. In fact, if I go to, let's say, product line, distributions are different. In this case, but I can still see that the p-value happens to be much larger than 0.05. So in certain data sets, I think it could be that the differences are significant, and it even gives me the conclusion from this statistical analysis. Now, this is just a few of the results that we have put in for a prototype. However, it could be many more, pretty much any types of results that you would be interested in seeing. Now, let's see if there are other types of data, let's say electronic accessories, maybe rating rather than sales. So now it is going to look into another table. It tells me that there are 170 ratings for electronic accessories, what the corresponding rating values have been, what the distribution is, then again what the geospatial distribution is, and what the statistical distribution is for that. And then I could be looking at other parameters also for this. So the idea is that just using natural language queries, so much can be derived, so much of intelligence can be derived. I could actually run several others, but because we have only 20 minutes in total, so I'm going to go over to the next slide for next example. Now, we are talking about decision support systems. So it's not like a product, but let's think about what are the types of tools that if we had in hand, we could make our decisions much more quickly. It would have been very informed decision, but also quicker. So if a tool could actually achieve the goal of having high quality data integration and then data aggregation so that we can look at different levels of the data, have very quick analysis tools, at our fingertips, and then also connect that to a knowledge base, not just the intelligence that's inherent in the data, but connect that to the real world data. For example, let's say weather data, sales will be affected by weather data, or let's say population data. What type of population is there around, let's say that particular factory output from the previous example and so on. And then if we can simplify the process of data access itself so that we can look at different views very quickly, use NLP to query into them, then that definitely will help us shorten the decision-making process. Now, even more important then is, hey, what are the things that will actually help us make the right decision in terms of, the insights that are required, the predictions that we may need to see, or the cause and effect that we may want to learn about. What are the things, what are the factors, and what types of effects they have had? So multi-domain visualization will help a lot with this, and we have hundreds of them that, they're all available on the same platform. Monitoring trends, doing comparisons, deriving cause and effect relationship using modeling. That could be statistical modeling or machine learning modeling and whatnot, geospatial analysis, and so on. Even time series forecasting, report generation. Then these actually will help us make better decisions. It strengthens the process. So, but then is it going to be like a bunch of tools all strewn over an entire area? No, it could be very integrated. So here's a prototype to show that. So it could have its own dashboard, which is showing the elements that you are interested in. It need not be, like a pre-packaged dashboard. So we are looking at, let's say, revenue data. We just created some synthetic. It's showing me how we have done over different years. It's again showing me geospatially how we have performed, and even forecasting. So now these are selected group of things that you want to put in a dashboard that you want to be monitoring. It could be other things as well. But then what if I want to dive deeper into the data set itself? Then we could do that, let's say, in the same interface, but then we can do it very, very easily. So what I really want to highlight is the ease of things and the integrated nature of it. So revenue, let's say if I want to get quarterly revenue, apply changes, that shows me quarterly revenue. I want to change, let's say the timeline, that's 2018. Let me go back to 2016. That fetches me data for all of that. Then I could be looking at groupings of the revenue based on, let's say, the salesperson, or grouping of numbers, or how we have done in terms of billable hours. It could be other factors. But then so far what we have shown seems to be more or less like data fetching. It can go much farther than that. Here you see there's computation going on. So given all the data, there may be a certain definition of efficiency for you, and the system would actually use that definition and provide you with results literally on the fly. Or the way that you calculate your returns. It could be simple net profit returns or ratio, or it could be your own formula, but all integrated in the same platform. Now let's talk about looking at the trends, superposing different components. So let's say, what are the types of sales, amounts of sales coming from return customers compared with our sales team actually working on it. And there can be many other sources as well, right? So this gives me much more insight about what may be happening. Now we go a step forward and we say, hey, I want to see how we are expected to do in next few months, or let's go to next 6 months, apply changes, and it came back with 6 months worth of forecast. So this tells me in this particular case, hey, there's going to be a downturn. So this is probably the right time to to bring about those changes which can arrest that downturn, right? Because we know in advance that if we maintain status quo, we may be losing revenue. So this already gives me sort of a flag. And of course, other types of visualizations that can be added to this. I talked about heat map in the dashboard itself. Now you see I can generate heat map based on all these different factors. So based on project types, we have 4 here, or source of the revenue, verticals, or sales rep, and so on, and so on. Again, if you want to filter the data totally customized way, which means I want to see some very, very specific things, we have pretty much all the factors that are there in the data, present here. Choosing any of these and selecting for any sets of them, I can get my views for the data. So let's say apply changes. That's the filter applied on that. Now, all of these are there, but then if I want to generate a report, let's say for this view, it could be something as simple as add to report that I clicked here. Let me add a few more. So let's say this one, and we're going to include these, add to report, let's say another chart. Now you see what happens if I go to the report module. The ones that I selected, they're showing up here that I want these in the report. Now generating the report can be as simple as clicking on this button and I get those results already in the form of a report with their sections and whatnot. Now here, in fact, even interactivity is involved. So these are exactly the numbers we saw for return customers and other different sources, right? So this is interesting because all of the different things that we talked in terms of decision support system has got coalesced or integrated into one product. And of course, there could be other views as well. And we could have NLP also working right here. So let's say revenue, I'm just going to quickly try one of these. And the same data and visualizations that we got there, or even more, could be derived using the NLP search as well. So this tells you that we have an integrated, we could develop an integrated platform to do all of that, and other types of modules that we may want to add. By the way, I should have mentioned that this is all happening in a notebook. We just built it in this way, so it's like any other application that you would use. Okay, so let's move on to the next example here. As I said, we developed an online learning system. I'm going to breeze through this rather quickly, but the idea was that in this case, Minnesota, University of Minnesota wanted to have their own learning system where they'll have full control over things, permissions for different groups of people accessing it, the way that homeworks are put in, the question bank, there should be their own question bank, and the way that students should answer their questions, there should be control over it. For example, if a math professor wants them to reply to questions in the form of fractions or root 3/2 rather than giving a decimal number, then they can apply those. Then this system actually allows for all of that. And then if you can see in this case, the faculty can create questions, whether, like single question or multiple choice questions or multi-part questions, and even include other components like graphics or mathematical expressions, or even manipulate. I think most of you may have heard of manipulate. So that can become part of the question paper itself. Now, whatever they create here, using this notebook, which can be used offline, which is very, very handy because one could be taking several hours or one could be working on it for several days. You save it as a file, continue working on it. And when you want to publish it, then you can combine those questions from the notebook with the questions which are there in the question bank, because now these questions from the notebook also will go into the question bank, and you can pick and choose from any sources. The question bank itself, the previous semester exams or quizzes and whatnot, and be able to come up with your homework assignment within a matter of minutes. And then to go from that assignment to publishing it, which becomes available to the students, is literally click of a button. It takes about a few seconds, and students can actually have access to those tests and quizzes and whatnot. Then here there are other features like being able to put in, being able to see the traditional form of the expression they're putting in, so that they can ensure they're putting it right. The system also auto grades, and as most of you may know, Mathematica, obviously, Wolfram language has a very powerful mathematical engine. So it's not about just matching answers, it's about equivalencies of answers, and it actually caters to that. It allows for tolerances. So one student may answer 3.35, another may answer 3.4. It can understand, and the professor can set those tolerances and whatnot. So all kinds of controls that they wanted to have. And because of these, now this system has been running there for 6 years, I think more than 6 years. Thousands and thousands of students have taken tests using the system. But let me show you another dimension to it rather quickly. We can be looking at very interesting insights from the data collected from the system. So let's say these are the distribution of the marks in semester 1 for a particular class. How have they performed over different semesters? And as you can see, the performance seems to have broadened, which means the students are performing very differently from each other, which was much more close packed initially. So this probably tells me a story that probably some kind of improvement is required in which way that teaching is being done. And we can look at the individual data or different visualizations, like this is the trajectory of a particular student compared to the entire population of his class. And you can see his performance has been wobbling, so maybe that student needs help. So all kinds of insights that can be derived from this kind of analysis, and this is all integrated in the form of an online learning system. So let me move to the second last example. Here we have a printed circuit board. We can actually use machine learning to detect what are the different components or where those components are, get the bounding boxes using machine learning, or standard convolutional network, convolutional neural network, and then get automatically the cropped images of those components, compare that to the library that the system may already have, and then create a digital view of the circuit board. Now that can be compared to the original design, and if there are faults, components are not in the right place, or right kinds of components are not there, or their ratings are different, they can be detected more or less automatically using the neural net framework that Wolfram language has. Now, similarly, let's imagine that a drone is flown over an entire region over several days. Data is collected for all the roofs that are there. Now, machine learning can be used to classify them into the materials used for different roofs. Now, suddenly you have an entire mapping of the market. Let's say it's a roofing company. Then they know what the market is like, how many houses are using metal roofs versus wood, and so on, and they can target much better. In addition to that, we can go next step and identify which are the houses which require repair or require maybe replacement altogether. So now the company can market it in very, very specific to those specific customers, giving them just the right types of options that you think is going to be most advantageous for them, again, using the CNNs. So of course, given the limited time we had, I presented it at a high level, but if you would have any questions, we could take them. I think we do have a few minutes left. Okay, so I'll see if somebody is posing a question, but I just wanted to show that the unique features that the consulting group brings to the table, multi-paradigm approach to the problems that we try to attack and solve, deep domain expertise that our team has, and people with computational expertise as well as expertise in from technologies, people who can work cross-discipline, having very innovative ways of using different technologies and so on. So I would encourage, all of you, if you do have project ideas in mind, and if you want to have a sounding board, you want to have a team who can help you get to the next level, then please don't hesitate and come and talk to us. We are excited to see the amazing projects that our customers have been doing. In fact, pretty much everything that I showed today, they're inspired by real life projects, that our team has been doing. And that's what actually keeps us so excited. Um, okay. Any questions from anybody? I hope I'm not missing the questions. Maybe somebody's trying to ask. Oh, yeah, there are some raised hands here. Okay. Yes. Michael, you had a question? Oops, are the controls working all right?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Good, okay. Yes, there was a couple of questions in the chat section. People are asking to what extent the decision support system is different from what you can get in Tableau.
Oh, it's a very good question. So the difference is in two ways. See, Tableau comes with prepackaged options and solutions, and you can use them, and that's very effective at that level. And kudos to the team for doing it well. What we bring to the table is all custom ways of looking at things, not things which are prepackaged, and then things which are specific to your business, things which are most interesting to you, and deeper level analyses. In fact, I didn't have time to talk about it, but for example, if you're working on sales, then using that data to actually develop simulations to be able to run, let's say, what if scenarios. So let's say if it's, going back to my example of factory outlet, what if scenarios, what if I change my pricing this way? What if I open another store in a certain location? And simulations can actually return those results. So the DSS could have a framework for the simulations, and we could generate those insights using that. That is just one example. There can be very interesting views that you want to create from the scratch, and DSS can support that. In addition to that, let's say tomorrow if you want to add a custom module to it, then this allows for that, right? So there are so many different ways in which you can customize it, and you can get it developed specifically for you rather than adapting yourself for an existing product or set of tools.
Yeah, the Google Data Studio also allows for future projections. So how do we differ from that?
Right, that's a good question. So we can differ because, see, there are automated ways of forecasting like we did in this case. What if we want to force a specific type of model, let's say time series model or Aremax model, then you don't really get control like that with several other systems, but we can actually integrate that into the DSS itself, right? So it could be specific types of Aremax modeling which has been more effective for your business. They get integrated into the DSS and you use them. And there can be different options. It need not be just one particular type of forecasting and so on. So all of this, and as I said, at any point, the functionality can be extended based on the latest and greater things that are coming out in Wolfram language. And as you know, we have been very, very aggressive in developing newer functionality. So they can be continuously added to enrich the DSS that you may have for yourself.
Okay, thanks very much, Anshu.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, so I think we're on the dot in terms of time. I can wait for a few more minutes if anybody else had questions. Of course, let me mention in the meanwhile that if you would like to meet the consulting group, there is a booth that you can go from the products and demos menu from Pathable main page. And there are our developers who are available there from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central Time, and you can interact with them. I'm also there, for a bit of the time, and you can ask for meetings as well. Okay, so I do have something coming in the chat. If you would like to contact us, the question is there an email address? Yeah, you can write to techinquiries@wolfram.com. So let's say, so that's techinquiries@wolfram.com, or our number, which is 217 0987181, correct? 398, sorry. So you can talk to us as well. Of course, as you're in the conference, we are available in Pathable. So we definitely can be available for meetings as well. Okay, so I think we'll stop here. Thank you very much for attending the talk, and looking forward to seeing some of you in other talks as well as on the booth. Thank you.